It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
Welcome back. Today I have a great show on tap. It's going to be very informative, and I encourage you all to share it throughout the community because we're going to be talking about a lot of the fraudulent activities that are out there where people are trying to get your money, get the elderly money, any of our money. So in the studio with me today, I have Deputy Chief Budensiek with me and also Detective Jennifer Jaques. So we're going to go into that in here in just a minute. I want to thank my sponsors. Indiantown Marina, it's one of South Florida's best boat storage facilities located inland on the Okeechobee Waterway. Indiantown Marina is a well-protected hurricane hull. It is home to many of the cruising community who find the facility ideally situated and user-friendly. Indiantown Marina also has a do-it-yourself and full-service boat yard offering the best of all worlds when it comes to servicing your vessel. Electrical, mechanical, bottom painting, prop, shaft work, boat seating, you name it, Indiantown Marina can take care of it. For more information, give them a call at 772-597-2457, 597-2457, or visit IndiantownMarina.com. Also, I want to remind everybody the Martin County Fair is coming up. It's February 9th through 17th, but ahead of that, we are going to have the Miss Martin County Fair Scholarship Pageant. This is open to all ladies that are in 9th through 11th grade. Wonderful scholarship pageant. You can get cash prizes and they'll take you shopping, a lot of fun things, but we need to have your application by November 22nd. That's coming right up next week. But folks, this is one of the more fun events coming up here, and it happens at the Lyric Theater on January 19th. But you need your application again by November 22nd. And also I want to remind everybody our sponsorships are available right now with the county fair. We have over 40,000 people that are come through the gates. It's a great place to showcase your businesses and be a part of the community and help the kids out here that are in the 4-H and FFA programs. And I already have H.E. Hill Foundation and Sailfish Roofing and eBurst Law Firm. They've all come in with some ribbon sponsorships that are greatly appreciated. Without you, we couldn't do it. So if you want more information, martincountyfair.com. Now, I have in the studio, I'm so proud to introduce Chief Deputy John Budensiek. He is a career law enforcement officer who has served the citizens of Martin County for 26 years. He began his career at the Martin County Sheriff's Office in 1997 as a uniformed deputy on road patrol. For many years of his career, he served as a narcotics detective and on SWAT. His career also includes working in every supervisory rank within the Sheriff's Office, supervising narcotics, Marine, K-9, aviation, and the Uniform Road Patrol Division. He currently oversees all the departments at the Martin County Sheriff Office. Chief Budensiek is a graduate of the Martin County Leadership Class 30. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice from Columbia Southern University and has studied at IRSC and the University of Virginia. He is also a graduate of the FBI National Academy. The Chief is a lifetime Martin County resident who lives in Hobe Sound with his wife and 4 children. Welcome back, Chief Budensiek. I appreciate you.
Pleasure to be here.
And it's always a pleasure, and it's always good information. And to your right, we have Detective Jennifer Jaques. She's with the Martin County Sheriff's Office and has been in law enforcement for 20 years. Detective Jaques became a sworn police officer with the City of Port St. Lucie in 2006, and then in 2010, she began her career with the Martin County Sheriff's Office. Detective Jaques started out working road patrol and then transferred to the traffic unit where she investigated basic traffic crashes, DUIs, traffic homicides, and conducted enforcement operations. In 2017, she became the traffic unit corporal, training new hires and longtime deputies who were new to the unit. Since 2019, Detective Jaques has been a detective in the Criminal Investigations Division assigned to the Economic Crime Unit, specializing in elderly exploitation, money laundering, frauds, and scams. And boy, oh boy, I appreciate you both coming in to talk about that because it seems like every time I open up Facebook and I see the Martin County Sheriff page, we're talking about some kind of fraud that we need to be watching out for. So, Detective Jaques, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about what's happening in the community with fraud and what we need to look out for. We're coming up with the holiday season and...
Yeah, so I guess the most common thing that we're seeing is the phone calls from the spam numbers, the text messages, and the emails. Most of the time, if they're asking for money, it's going to be a scam. A lot of times they prey on the elderly because they're more vulnerable, they're more naive, they're more trusting. And yeah, if they're asking for money, it's probably a scam. Most of the money is going to other countries, unfortunately, and I mean it's a growing problem. It's our number one crime in the country right now.
It's number one crime in the country. Chief Budensiek, what are you seeing out there as you're around in the community and talking with folks?
Well, the detective hit on it. This is extremely frustrating for us because we at the Martin County Sheriff's Office pride ourselves in catching the bad guy. We're the wrong exit county. But then these frauds and scams, they're done from other countries. A lot of them are India, China hits us. We go through a list of countries. They're done from other countries. So the detectives do a ton of work. They identify, yes, it's a fraud. Yes, you lost your money. No, we can't claw that money back for you. And on top of that, we can't make an arrest. So it's a lose, 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 lose proposition for all of our victims. We see our elderly people. Last week we had a case where a lady fell in love with the love of her life and over the course of a year had sent $500,000 overseas. And we hear, I mean, that's an outlier story, but we hear stories similar to that every single week. And like the detective said, it's every kind of scam you can imagine, and it's every day. You get them on your phone. You'll probably get them today through Facebook, through text messages. You'll get phone calls. That's just your cell phone. Then your computer. You have people that are doing in-person scams where they walk up to you and try to hustle you saying that, hey, I won the lottery and I can't cash the check in because I don't have ID, but if you give me a down payment, I'll give you a portion of my proceeds. So the scams are never ending, and our success rate of actually putting somebody in jail, making them pay for the crime, are low.
And that's the tough part, is to find out they're actually not even in this country. So you have absolutely no jurisdiction to go after them, and it's pretty heartbreaking, I imagine, to tell some of the people that the funds are gone. So you have to be really judicious about who you're talking to and what you're providing them. What are some red flags that when somebody calls, because you'll have a lot of local calls come in now. I've noticed that somehow they've been able to make it look like it's a call from Stuart, Florida, and you think it might be the school or something. The number looks so familiar, and it's not. So when you get one of these calls, what questions should you be on the lookout for that says, this is not right, it's a red flag?
Well, typically they're going to ask you your name, your date of birth, your social security number. Those are all red flags. If it's a legitimate business calling you or one that you do business with, they're going to have that information anyway. If it's like FP&L or something like that, which we've had those too, where they've called and said, hey, your FP&L bill is due. Your electric's going to be turned off unless you go get $500 in Amazon gift cards and give me the numbers, or something like that. So obviously, if they're asking for personal information, that is a red flag. If they're asking you to purchase something with gift cards, that's a red flag. We don't pay bills and stuff like that with gift cards, as we all know. Unfortunately, the problem is that we all know that because we know that, but at the time, what these scammers do is they put that fear in you and they act on your emotion. And it makes you like, oh my goodness, my power, I need my power. And you go run and you do what they're asking you to do because you're trying to, you want to rectify the situation. So like I said, those things are red flags. If they're trying to keep you on the phone, that's a red flag. If they tell you, don't tell anybody about this, this is between us. When you go to the bank, this is what I want you to tell them, and it's a story that's made up, those are all red flags. Again, legitimate business isn't going to ask you to lie.
So what about, I've seen posts from the Sheriff's Department again that talk about AI, artificial intelligence, where they're cloning voices. Might be your grandchild's voice that says, Grandma, I'm in jail. Again, what are the red flags that somebody can tell? Because if it's a voice you know and love, you're apt to believe it.
Right. Well, those scams, the grandparent scams are what we call them. Those are all, it's the same story in every scenario, where they say that, your granddaughter, your grandson was arrested in a different city or town, and they're taken to jail, and they have a bond, but you have to pay a cash bond. And they ask you for a large amount of cash, and they'll only take cash. And then they tell you that they're going to send a courier to your home to pick it up. That's obviously, again, we think with our brains not on emotion, we know that that's not normal, right? We don't We don't pay cash bonds for and pay a courier to take care of that. But you're so scared at the time, and you're just trying to take care of your grandchild. So yeah, that's a huge thing right now. We have many cases involving the grandparent scams. But they're not going to, a real bondsman isn't going to ask for cash. They're not going to send a courier to your house to pick it up. And unfortunately for us, those cases are unsolvable because it's usually a Uber or a Lyft driver that's coming to pick up the money, who has no relation to the scam or the crime. They don't know what they're doing. They're just doing what they were asked to do by the person who ordered the Uber. And then they're delivering it to like a shopping plaza or a vacant home, and the person is walking up and taking it and then, turn it loose. And it's in Miami, most of the time they're all going to Miami. And unfortunately, once we send those search warrants or subpoenas to Uber or Lyft to try to find out who it was who ordered that Uber or Lyft, they're using VPNs, which are virtual private networks, blocking their identity. They're using fake names. They're using gift cards to pay for it. So it's
Untraceable.
Untraceable, yeah.
So if I can weigh in on that, your question would be our natural question. Well, why don't you just follow the Uber or Lyft driver? We've done that. So the bad guys on the other end, if you use that Uber or Lyft app, you can track your car and where it is. If that car gets hung up anywhere in the process, we pull it over and interview them and figure out exactly what's going on. They abandon the mission. So we're able to return the money back to the would-be victim and make them whole, but the bad guys are still moving on to the next scam. It's
still
a
out there.
sophisticated scam.
And as the money leaves the house, it's probably rare instances where you have enough time to be able to follow that Uber driver. I mean, somebody has to realize the minute their money left the house with that Uber driver that something's not right. I better call the sheriff's department.
Typically, it's the next day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The ones we've been able to intercept are family members who've come along and said something's wrong.
Okay.
And called us, and then we play into the scam in order to try to cut the head off the snake. But we've not been successful even with those. It shows you how sophisticated they are at hiding their identity.
It's sophisticated, and it's really infiltrated every community there is. There are no barriers for who they can infiltrate, but we really, as residents, just have to be judicious. We have to be cautious and suspect really every call. So if it is your grandson, let's go back to that for a second. What should they do? Like maybe hang up, call the grandson and make sure it was him or not him, or
Right, and in most cases, that's what they do after the fact, and they hang up and they're like, wait, that didn't seem right, and then they'll call and they're like, are you okay? Are you in this town? And they're like, no, Grandma, I'm home, and that's when they realize. So yes, that's a good way to find out. Also, trying to ascertain from the person you're speaking to on the phone what jail this person's at, and then you can call the jail and find out, hey, is so-and-so in your jail right now? Because most of the times the bad guys don't have the answers to that.
And I'm sure the bad guy will say, no, I can't call you back. If you wanted to say, I want to make sure it's Tommy, so I'm going to call you right back, Tommy, and they say, you can't, you won't be able to reach me, that's a red flag, right?
Yes.
They can always be able to call back and reach him if he truly was in jail. There would be a way to find out. So really, you just need to ask those questions. There was another scam I almost fell victim to, and it was selling a boat, and they sent a cashier's check and deposited it, and it was $10,000 over because they needed it shipped. And fortunately, we waited for that cash to clear, which it never did. But the scam was they wanted that extra $10,000. You pay it to my courier, who's going to pick up the boat, and but it was a cashier's check, so it made it seem real because you think cashier's checkers are good as cash. That's how we always grew up, but they're not anymore, are they?
They're not, because we can create them. You can go to Office Depot and buy blank check stock, and you could put anything you want on there. You could put it as a cashier's check and put a wrong account number and routing number on the check to make it appear like it's real. And then once it goes into your bank account, and let's say you did take out that $10,000, then you're in the whole $10,000 once it comes back as fraudulent, which takes some time, obviously, because the banks,
Right.
have
Goes through the
procedures.
process.
Yes.
It goes through the process. It might
Yes.
take a week before they realize it's fraudulent.
Right.
So another thing that's out there is check washing, right?
Yes.
Do you see
very
that
much
quite a
so.
bit here?
So essentially the same kind of thing where they're taking your check from the mail and they're creating other checks, like those checks like on the blank check stock like I explained, and they're putting your checking account information, they're copying your check and putting it on this other check, this one that the check stock, and then they're depositing it into accounts. And most of the accounts they're depositing those checks into are stolen identities. It's
So to weigh in on that, and the way they're intercepting these checks is they're just going through mailboxes. So we do get quite a few calls a year of individuals stealing mail out of mailboxes, and that's what they're looking for. So on the sender end, if you're writing checks to people, you need to be really diligent to make sure your check numbers, the amounts on the check, and the numbers actually reconcile with what was cashed on the back end. That's how we normally catch them after the fact.
So typically when that happens, are you able to help, or does the bank stand behind that check, or is there any safety or precaution for the consumer there that was stolen from?
Typically the bank takes the loss because the end bank, the bank that receives the check, the bank of first deposit, the one where it goes into, they'll either put the money in that account or they will not. Most of the time they put it in right away. When they don't, it's typically because they have to see from the bank that's giving them the money if it's a good check or not. If they give the person whose account is in, the money, the bank that took the loss will say, hey, that wasn't a good check, and they will give that bank, so many parts in there, that bank will give the funds back to the original bank, and then that bank will take the loss.
Okay, all right.
So typically the bank does take the loss on those cases. I know that there's some banks where their policies and procedures tell you that you have a certain amount of time to report that it is fraud or fraudulent check to their bank. So I would advise people to pay attention to those things, because we've had cases where the victim took 3 months to realize and told the bank, and they actually didn't give them the money back because of those rules that are in place. Yeah.
Again, we're speaking with Detective Jaques and Chief Deputy Budensiek from the Martin County Sheriff Office, and we're talking about the different fraud scams that are out there that, as residents, we really need to be aware of. And with the check washing we were just talking about, are there other precautions people can take? And maybe it might be as much as having 2 bank accounts where you only write checks out of a bank account that only has so much money in it that so you can't be taken for $100,000 or whatever check.
Yeah, I mean, that's an idea. Yeah, I would, if you can avoid sending checks altogether, I would avoid sending checks.
So there's a lot of apps out there, but again, the elderly are not really sophisticated with the apps. Yeah, we're all used to the paper. I mean, myself, I like the paper, but it's not as safe anymore. It's not as secure.
What gets targeted a lot are the businesses that are writing $100,000 worth of checks on a weekend on payday. So, $2,000 here, $3,000 there is not a lot for them, but they wreak havoc on those businesses. And I know a lot of our local larger businesses have had that happen to them several times. They send out a lot of checks, and then they get caught with these scammers.
So businesses in particular need to be aware of this as well. Social media, I feel like every time I pick up my phone and Facebook, social media, I have these messages coming in, and it says it's from Meta Suite or Meta Security, or it looks like it's Facebook, and you violated a term and they want you to click on things. How often are you finding people that are getting scammed through social media sites like Facebook or Instagram?
Honestly, we don't have a lot of those here in Martin County. I haven't heard of any of my partners having those cases either, so I'm not seeing any of that really. Most of the time when they're clicking on the links and stuff, it's from emails that they're getting, or Facebook messages.
So those are the ones that you need to be cautious of, the phone messages and the emails that come in. So as we're heading into Christmas, are there any scams that have just reared their head, a new one that people are not aware of yet?
Not particularly. It's the normal scams that we've had lately. Nothing is standing out in regards to that. What you mentioned, the Facebook Marketplace, the selling of the boat.
Right.
That's pretty big right now because people are selling things. So that's pretty big.
What do you suggest people do when they are selling things online to remain safe?
So I actually heard it on the radio this morning. There was one where they were selling something on Facebook Marketplace, and this person reached out and said they were going to Zelle them money, and they needed their email address. They wouldn't do it by phone number, which if they're asking for a specific thing, that in and of itself is a red flag, because you can Zelle money with a phone number or an email address. So she provided the email address, and they sent an email saying I just Zelled you this money, click this link to accept it. Zelle doesn't do that. So that's a red flag. The money goes automatically into your account when you use Zelle. Most of the time, these scams on the Facebook ads, the marketplace, they're wanting to do Zelle. Actually, my dad actually fell victim to one. They're wanting to use Zelle, or like you said before, the cashier's checks.
Right.
So that's red flag.
If they click on the link, though, what happens? What takes place? What do they get once they click on that link? They get access to your computer, your bank account?
It depends. Sometimes it gives them remote access to your computer, which is terrible because we all have all of our personal identity stuff on our computers. Right. But in those Zelle cases, they click on it and it takes them to the Zelle website where it asks you to log in. However, it's a fake. It looks like the real Zelle website, but it's not. It's a fake one that the scammers made up.
So you're giving them your user and password when you go to log
Zelle.
in there, thinking
Correct.
you're logging into your Zelle account.
Correct.
Another thing that I've seen out there a lot with items that are for sale is they'll send you a text message and say, I want to make sure that you're real. So, yeah, we want to authenticate it. So what is that about? I'm like,
So
okay, that's a fraud, but I don't know what they're trying to do. So.
Yeah, so they're sending you, so typically it's a Gmail, actually. So Gmail email addresses, a lot of people use their first and last name for their Gmail email addresses. So the scammers will see that and they'll try to log into your Gmail account with your first and last name, put in a password, and it'll say, oh, this is the wrong password. And then they'll say, send me the code. Gmail will send the code to the actual person, which will be you. And so then the bad guy's like, hey, I need that so that you can verify your identity, which really they're taking that code so they can change your password.
And then you're locked out.
In your email. And then once they get into your email, they see where you bank, they see where you hang out, they see what you're into, they see everything.
So there's just so many things that we have to worry about as just people living our lives to protect ourselves. And as wonderful as technology is, it's truly something that's hard to keep up with crime, right? I mean, it's as advantageous as it is to us, it's even more advantageous to the criminals.
It changes every day.
It truly does. And I just keep thinking about with the holidays coming up and all the different, everybody wants to be out there helping organizations. Do you see anything where, and this is terrible, as a nonprofit here in the fair itself, we're asking people for donations, but is that something people have to worry about as well, as who they're donating to?
Yes, if I can hit on that, we do get, these are more in-person scams. They're not all illegal scams. There are people out there just hustling for money. You're going to get a lot going into the season of, I don't know if you saw last year, the family playing violins. And,
yes.
We don't have any money. We don't have a home. They were making huge amounts of money. We actually did an inventory and they had several $1,000s on them. So they're playing on our emotions. It's the Christmas season. We don't want to see a family out there hurting. So we give them money. It's not a crime, but it's definitely a scam. And, we do our part to try to move these people along, but they're constant. They were here last week, a different crew, kind of doing the same scam. So watch for that. There's a lot of nonprofits. There's a lot of things that are going on. Those are good places to give. They're already verified. They're established here in the county. Put your money into that or your church or whatever you know is legitimate, and try to shy away from giving them to the homeless people or people that say they don't have money. We'll take care of the homeless people and the people that don't have money through the nonprofits.
Right. There's
So
a
we
lot of
take care
nonprofits that
Yes.
help the homeless, right? So with that, in panhandling here in Martin County, what are the laws there? So if we're driving down the road and I see a panhandler, is it allowed here?
They're allowed to panhandle, but what they're not allowed to do is impede traffic. So if you've noticed, they used to be along US 1. We got trespass authorization from the Department of Transportation, and we've moved them all off the major highways. So you don't see them there. If they're there, call us, we'll come and move them along. Now you'll see them in the private parking lots, like one block over. Publix, all the major box stores, they'll be in those parking lots. As they show up, those box stores reach out to us and they issue us trespass authorization so we can move them along from there. So it's a constant game of whack-a-mole, but technically, yes, they can panhandle, but we are limiting the spaces where they can panhandle. Again, keeping in mind that there's resources for these people. We're not trying to hurt people, but there's
Right.
other ways to do this, and we're not trying to take advantage of our people who are trying to be nice.
That's absolutely right. And what about the medians? You said don't impede traffic. So does that mean if they're in the median, where it's not on the road technically, is that impeding traffic?
They are, because they're walking out into the road and picking up money. They had to get there somehow, so
Right.
they're not allowed to be there at all.
Okay.
So if you, again, see them, call us, we'll move them along. You shouldn't be seeing them now. It took us a while to get to where we had the authority to move them along, but we've done a good job. We've worked with our county commissioners who helped us tremendously on that task.
That's fantastic news. So I know that I've seen a lot of the panhandlers there in the median, so it's good to know. All we have to do is call the sheriff's department and say there's panhandling here, and you'll take care of that for us. And it is. I appreciate that you're bringing up that there are organizations that are out there to help people that are in need. If you are homeless, if you need food. But giving money is one of the worst things that you can do, because it could be a scam, just as you said.
Sure.
And I will admit, I fell victim to that one. She was pregnant, and they had a little child, and he's there playing his violin. He said, I just came to this country, and
Yep.
I said, okay, and I said, go contact my husband, he can get you a job. And he's like, okay. Of course, he never did. And then I was like, I think that story came out not too long after that. I'm like, okay, that was a scam. But they really pull at your heartstrings, and I feel like I'm pretty smart. I try to find these things, but even I fell victim. So it's one of those things. We've got about a minute left here. What are the final thoughts that you can give to listeners that just watching out for fraud here in the community? There's so much of it.
Just be very cautious with trusting people on the internet, because anybody can be anybody on the internet. Keep an eye on your bank accounts, especially if you're sending out checks. And typically, if it sounds too good to be true, it normally is.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Yes.
I found that so true throughout life. If it sounds too good to be true, it really is.
Yeah.
So watch your bank accounts. That's something we always do anymore, is look at those statements that we get every month. Very important. That's really the way to identify the fraud. And if we see it, we go to our sheriff's office, because #wrong exit. You guys, thank you so much for all the work that you do. We just touched on one area today, but there's so much that you're out there protecting our community, and I can't tell you how proud I am, and so many people here in Martin County, to have the law enforcement that we have here. You guys truly, you do get those bad guys. So,
Well, thank you. That's a collective effort. We do it with your support, so we don't do it alone.
well, I think everybody feels safer for it, and we thank you for it. And next week, we're going to have Representative Toby Overdorf in the studio, and he's going to tell us about his legislative priorities that are coming up, and that's coming up here in January, early session this year. So lots of good stuff. Chief Budensiek, thank you today. Detective Jaques, thank you so much for this information. I appreciate you coming in. Always good information, and the community appreciates it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're signing off, or we have more time?